Hi everyone, and welcome to this audiobook designed for the EWRB Electrician Regulation Exam. My name is Aria, and I work alongside Whitroy as an electrical tutor. This audiobook explains the exam topics in simple spoken language, making it easier to understand and review anywhere, anytime. Before we get into the lesson, I want to explain what this audiobook actually is. This audiobook is not a word-for-word reading of ASNZS 3000. You must always refer to the real standard when you're doing electrical work or preparing for an assessment. What we do here is take the important ideas from the standard and rewrite them in simple spoken English. The goal is to make the rules easier to understand, easier to remember, and easier to revise, especially when you're listening on the go. So think of this audiobook as a learning guide, not a replacement for the actual standard. Alright, let's begin. Today we're starting section 4, which looks at electrical equipment and appliances. This part of the standard brings together many practical rules that you will use on real jobs. It explains how different types of equipment must be installed, how they must be protected, and what safety features need to be in place. Some of the clauses are short and simple, and others go into detailed requirements for appliances like motors, water heaters, heating cables, and gas systems. As we move through the section, we'll break the ideas down into clear points so they're easier to understand and remember. Alright, let's begin section 4, Selection and Installation of Appliances and Accessories. This part explains how appliances and accessories must be chosen and installed so they can operate safely and correctly in a New Zealand electrical installation. Clause 4.1, General. This clause says that Section 4 sets the minimum standard for selecting and installing appliances, accessories, and other electrical equipment that are not covered in other parts of Part 2 of ASNZS 3000. To meet the safety requirements of Part 1, we must follow the rules in this section whenever we choose or install this type of equipment. Clause 4.1.1, Application. This clause explains that the provisions in Section 4 apply to the selection and installation of appliances and accessories that are not already covered in other parts of Part 2. The intention is that by following this section, the installation will meet the safety outcomes required by Part 1. Clause 4.1.2, Selection and Installation. This clause explains that electrical equipment must be chosen and installed so it performs properly and safely in the conditions it will face. It must be able to operate correctly under external influences, it must not create harmful effects on the installation, and it must work safely once assembled and connected to the supply. It must also be installed so people are not exposed to electric shock, fire, high temperature, or physical injury when abnormal conditions such as overload or faults occur. To achieve this, the equipment normally needs to comply with the relevant Australian and New Zealand standards. Section 4 then goes on to explain how to address issues such as external influences, adverse effects, protection, methods of connection, and suitability for different environments. Clause 4.1.3, External Influences. This clause says that electrical equipment must have characteristics that suit the environment where it will be installed. It needs to function properly at its intended location even when exposed to environmental or other conditions. This can be achieved by choosing equipment with suitable design features, or by adding installation measures that protect it against the environment. External influences may include mechanical damage, rain, snow, sunlight, splashing, humidity, plants, animals, excessive dampness, corrosive fumes, galvanic effects, dust, steam, oil, temperature extremes, solar radiation, explosive atmospheres, vibration, or seismic activity such as earthquakes or tremors. The main idea is that the equipment must continue to be safe and functional under these real-world conditions. Clause 4.1.4, Adverse Effects and Interference. This clause explains that equipment must be chosen so that during normal operation, including switching, it does not cause harmful effects to other equipment. When selecting equipment, we must consider issues such as poor power factor, excessive voltage fluctuation, distortion of current waveforms, or electromagnetic emission. These effects can interfere with other equipment or reduce performance. The goal is to make sure the installation operates smoothly without one appliance disturbing another, and this is achieved by good equipment selection and proper installation. Clause 4.2. Protection against thermal effects. This part explains how electrical equipment must be selected and installed so that heat from the equipment does not create danger to people, property, or other parts of the installation. Clause 4.2.1. General. This clause says that electrical equipment must be installed so that the heat it produces during normal operation does not create harmful effects on the equipment itself or on anything around it. Adequate ventilation must be provided when needed so the equipment stays within its normal temperature range. The main idea is that heat must not cause deterioration, unsafe operation, or early failure. Clause 4.2.2. Prevention of fire hazard. This clause explains that electrical equipment must be arranged so it does not create a fire risk in the place where it is installed. Clause 4.2.2.1. Installation of electrical equipment. This clause says that equipment must not be placed in a position where the heat it produces, or any fault it may develop, could cause material around it to ignite. The installer must think about the environment and avoid creating a fire hazard. Clause 4.2.2.2. Storage of flammable materials. This clause explains that when an area is likely to be used to store flammable materials, measures must be taken to prevent sparks or high temperatures from igniting them. The installer must make sure equipment is positioned or protected so that stored materials cannot be set alight. Clause 4.2.2.3. Protection from high temperatures. This clause explains that some fixed electrical equipment can reach high surface temperatures that may ignite nearby materials. When this is the case, the equipment must either be mounted on materials that can withstand the heat, screened from combustible materials, or placed far enough away so the heat does not cause a harmful effect. The idea is that surrounding parts of the building must not overheat to a dangerous level. This clause also explains that some equipment produces radiant heat, such as lamps, heaters, and transformers. These must be placed far enough away so that anything behind or around them does not reach a dangerous temperature. The notes remind us that long-term heating can cause some materials to slowly break down or even self-ignite, and that restricting heat dissipation can increase temperatures inside the equipment. Clause 4.2.2.4. Emission of arcs or sparks. This clause explains that if permanently connected equipment may produce arcs or sparks during normal operation, it must be enclosed or screened by arc-resistant material, or placed far enough away from building elements so those arcs do not cause thermal damage. The idea is to contain or control the arc so it cannot set fire to anything around it. Clause 4.2.2.5. Electrical equipment enclosures. This clause says that the materials used to build enclosures must be able to withstand the highest temperature likely to be produced by the equipment. Flammable or easily combustible materials must not be used for enclosures because they may ignite or melt when heated. Clause 4.2.2.6. Prevention of spread of fire. This clause explains that equipment such as switches, socket outlets, and other accessories must be positioned so they maintain a minimum separation from openings and fire-rated building elements. The separation distance helps ensure that fire does not easily pass through. Openings made for electrical equipment and fire-rated barriers must not penetrate more than half the thickness of the barrier. Any space around the equipment and the barrier must be sealed to the correct fire resistance rating so the barrier continues to perform its function. Clause 4.2.2.7. Thermal insulation. This clause applies to New Zealand domestic installations. It explains that appliances and accessories must be installed assuming that thermal insulation will be added in ceilings, walls, or underfloors in the future. The installer must position equipment so that added insulation does not cause the equipment to overheat. Clause 4.2.3. Protection against burns. This clause explains that parts of electrical equipment that can be reached within arm's reach must not exceed the temperature limits shown in Table 4.1. If any part of the installation might reach a temperature above its limit under normal conditions, that part must be guarded so accidental contact cannot occur. The clause includes two exceptions. Equipment that already complies with a standard specifying a limiting temperature does not need further guarding, and items such as lamps are not covered by this requirement. Clause 4.3. Connection of electrical equipment. This clause explains how electrical equipment must be connected to installation wiring. Clause 4.3.1. General. This clause explains that equipment may be connected using several permitted methods listed in later subclauses. Wherever possible, the point of connection must be close to the equipment and must be protected from mechanical damage and interference. Wiring that forms part of an item of equipment is considered equipment wiring and must follow the relevant product standard or ASNZS 3100. Clause 4.3.2. Direct connection. This clause explains that the installation wiring of the installation may be connected directly to the terminals provided on the equipment. Clause 4.3.2.1. General. This clause states that when equipment is designed with terminals for direct connection, the installation wiring must be connected directly to those terminals. Clause 4.3.2.2. Installation coupler. This clause explains that an installation coupler, whether enclosed or not, that complies with ASNZS 61535, may be used to connect cables to electrical equipment. The wiring on the equipment side of the coupler is considered equipment wiring. Notes explain that installation couplers are intended for permanent connection and that some types allow the equipment to be disconnected only when not under load. Clause 4.3.3. Socket outlet. This clause explains that installation wiring may terminate at a socket outlet and the equipment is supplied through a plug and flexible cord or cable. The wiring between the socket outlet and the equipment is considered equipment wiring. Clause 4.3.4. Other connecting devices. This clause explains that wiring may terminate at a junction box, sealing rows, or another suitable device used to connect a specific item or items of equipment. The wiring from the connecting device to the equipment is considered equipment wiring. Clause 4.3.5. Equipment wiring. This clause explains that equipment wiring must be as short as practicable and must have a current carrying capacity not less than the maximum load of the connected equipment. The wiring must be protected against short circuit in accordance with Clause 2.5.4. Where earthing is required, the equipment wiring must include a protective earthing conductor of sufficient size so that, in the event of a fault to earth, the protective device operates without damaging the earthing conductor. Two exceptions apply. Smaller conductors may be used when an assessment confirms they meet the protection requirements. And wiring between a terminating device and a pendant socket outlet is considered installation wiring. Clause 4.4. Socket outlets. Clause 4.4.1. Types. Clause 4.4.1.1. General. Socket outlets shall be suitable for the intended application and location of installation and shall comply with the requirements of the following standards or standards equivalent thereto, ASNZS 3112, ASNZS 3123, ASE 60309, and ASNZS 3131. Clause 4.4.1.2. Different systems. Where an ELV electrical installation and an electrical installation of greater than ELV are in the same premises, all socket outlets supplied at ELV shall have their voltage conspicuously marked, and shall be of a form that will prevent insertion of an ELV plug into a socket outlet connected to a circuit of greater than extra low voltage. Plugs and socket outlets for SELV and PELV systems shall not be provided with an earthing contact or pin and shall comply with Clause 7.5.10. Clause 4.4.2. Location. Clause 4.4.2.1. Accessibility. Each socket outlet shall be installed so that any plug intended to be used with the socket outlet can be conveniently inserted and withdrawn and not cause damage to any flexible cord or cable connected to the plug. Socket outlets shall not be installed where the withdrawal of a plug from the socket outlet is restricted by a permanent fixture or fitting within the installation. Clause 4.4.2.2. Protection of socket outlets. Socket outlets shall be installed so that they will not be subjected to undue mechanical stress or damage in normal service. Where installed in a floor or other horizontal surface, socket outlets shall be designed or arranged to prevent the accumulation of dust or water therein. Where installed within 75 mm of a floor, Socket outlets shall be installed so that any plug used with the socket outlet is withdrawn in the horizontal plane. Socket outlets shall be so installed that a plug is not likely to become loose or to malfunction because of gravity, vibration, or the weight of the flexible cord or cable. Where installed in a location that is not readily accessible for the connection of a fixed or stationary appliance or a luminaire, the socket outlet shall be securely fixed to a structure or support to ensure that no mechanical strain is placed on the installation wiring connections when inserting or removing a plug to the socket outlet. The socket outlet need not be fixed in position where the installation meets the following conditions. Cable connections are not subject to undue mechanical stress. The wiring system where likely to be disturbed is supported. The wiring system where installed in a suspended ceiling is supported. Conductors are flexible or stranded type, and insulated unsheathed cables, including exposed cores where sheathing is removed, are enclosed. The use and location of socket outlets is restricted in a number of particular situations, including damp situations in accordance with Section 6 and hazardous areas and other situations in accordance with Section 7. Clause 4.4.3 Earthing contacts. Every socket outlet shall be provided with an earthing contact. Socket outlets for SELV and PELV systems shall not be provided with an earthing contact. Clause 4.4.4 Switching device. Clause 4.4.4.1 General. Each socket outlet shall be individually controlled by a separate switch that complies with either ASNZS 3133 or as 60947.3 and operates in all active conductors. Exceptions apply where a single switch is used to control two socket outlets located immediately adjacent to each other, where a socket outlet rated at not more than 10 amperes and installed for a fixed or stationary appliance or a luminaire and is not readily accessible does not need to be controlled by a switch, and where a socket outlet that is switched by the insertion and withdrawal of the plug is deemed to meet this requirement. Clause 4.4.4.2 Rating. Each switch shall have a current rating, at its operating voltage, not less than the current rating of the socket outlet it controls. Where one switch is used to control two socket outlets, the current rating of the switch shall be not less than the total current rating of the socket outlets or the current rating of the overcurrent protective device on the circuit, whichever is the lesser value. Clause 4.4.4.3 Location and marking. Each switch or means of operating the switch for a socket outlet shall be as close as practicable to the socket outlet and marked to indicate the socket outlet or the connected electrical equipment it controls. Where the switch is remote from the socket outlet, it shall be installed in a convenient and readily accessible position and marked in accordance with the requirement that the location of the switch shall be clearly and permanently marked, and both the switch and the socket outlet shall be provided with legible, indelible, and uniform labels indicating their relationship. Marking is not required where the socket outlet is located more than 2.5 meters above the ground, floor, or platform, or is provided for a specific lamp, luminaire, or appliance, or is not accessible for general use. Clause 4.4.4.4 Pendant type socket outlet. A switch incorporated in a pendant socket outlet attached to a flexible cord shall interrupt all live conductors. Exception applies where pendant-type multiphase outlets with switching only in the active conductors are allowed when the outlet is not dependent on the supply cable for support, when additional mechanical protection is provided where necessary, and when the supply cable is selected to take into account any likelihood of vibration and movement expected during operation. Clause 4.4.5 Polarization and phase sequence. Where socket outlets of the same type form part of an electrical installation, the order of connection of the socket outlets shall be the same. All socket outlets that accommodate 3-pin or flat-pin plugs shall be connected so that, when viewed from the front of the socket outlet, the order of connection commencing from the slot on the radial line shall be earth, active, neutral, in a clockwise direction. Clause 4.5 Lighting equipment and accessories. Clause 4.5.1 Lamp holders. Clause 4.5.1.1 Location. All lamp holders shall be located to be adequately protected against damage that might reasonably be expected. In order to protect against inadvertent contact with live parts, low-voltage lamp holders shall be located to minimize the risk of direct contact with live parts of a lamp holder when the lamp is removed, and mechanical damage to the lamp or lamp holder. These requirements may be satisfied by installation not less than 1.8 meters above the ground, floor, or platform, or by provision of a suitable guard for the lamp and its lamp holder, or where the lamp holder is incorporated in a luminaire. A pendant lamp holder shall not be exposed to the effects of significant movement of air such as outdoors or where exposed to the operation of fans. Clause 4.5.1.2 Edison screw lamp holders. Every low-voltage Edison screw lamp holder shall be connected to the supply so that, where a neutral conductor is required, it shall be connected to the outer contact. This requirement need not apply where an Edison screw lamp holder is incorporated in an appliance in a manner permitted by the ASNZS 60335 series or the ASNZS 3350 series of the luminaire, and the lamp holder is provided with a shroud or skirt that prevents contact with the outer contact. Clause 4.5.1.3 Festoon lighting. Festoon lighting shall be located and supported so that no lamp will be within 0.15 meters of flammable materials or structural metalwork, or within arm's reach of the ground or any other place on which a person is likely to stand. Festoon lighting may be within arm's reach where installed immediately below a ceiling. Clause 4.5.2 Lamps and luminaires. Clause 4.5.2.1 General. Lamps, luminaires, and their associated ancillary gear shall be so installed as not to cause undue temperature rise, ignition, or deterioration of the materials on which they are mounted or that they illuminate. Luminaires shall be suitable for the highest temperatures to which they are likely to be subjected by external influences, and be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions taking account of the highest rating of lamp to be used. Clause 4.5.2.2 Lamps near flammable materials. Where lamps are located near flammable materials, lamps shall be suitably shielded by a shade, reflector, guard, or enclosure to prevent contact with the material, and lamps such as spotlights that generate heat in the illuminated surface shall be separated by such a distance that the material will not attain excessive temperature. Where information is not otherwise provided with products, the minimum separation distances given in Table 4.2 shall be used. Flammable shades shall not be installed where they are liable to come in contact with any lamp. Clause 4.5.2.3 Recessed luminaires. Clause 4.5.2.3.1 Requirements. Recessed luminaires and their auxiliary equipment shall be installed in a manner designed to prevent excessive temperature rise of the luminaire and auxiliary equipment, and the risk of fire from ignition of combustible materials. These requirements shall be satisfied by one of the following compliance methods: the installation of a luminaire designed and certified by the manufacturer as being suitable for operation in contact with combustible materials or in contact with or enclosed or covered by thermal insulation material, or the installation of a luminaire in combination with a barrier tested and classified in compliance with ASNZS 5110 as being suitable for the installation conditions, or the installation of a luminaire with separation from thermal insulating materials, combustible building elements, and loose combustible materials not less than the minimum clearance specified by the manufacturer, which may require a barrier or guard constructed of fire-resistant materials, or the default clearances shown in Figure 4.7. Clause 4.5.2.3.2 Warning sign. Where recessed luminaires are installed in an accessible roof space, a permanent and legible warning sign shall be installed in the roof space adjacent to the access panel in a position that is visible to a person entering the space. The sign shall comply with AS 1319 and contain the words shown in Figure 4.8 with a minimum size of lettering of 10 mm. Clause 4.5.2.3.3 Installation precautions. The following precautions should be undertaken for the installation of recessed downlights. The heat generated from lamps should be dissipated in order to prevent over-temperature damage to the luminaire or to adjacent materials. Cooling air circulation through or around the equipment is a requirement for the typical range of downlights. ASNZS 60598.1 and ASNZS 60598.2.2 detail the test method and the maximum surface temperatures permitted for recessed luminaires. The maximum temperature of adjacent materials is to be no more than 90 degrees Celsius. In the case of a suitably designed and certified luminaire, The manufacturer's instructions may restrict installation, including warnings such as covering with insulation or the symbol meaning do not cover. Unmarked light fittings shall be treated as do not cover. Under National Building Code requirements, bulk thermal insulation is prevalent in modern building construction within roofs, ceilings, walls, and floors depending on the building and its climate zone. Bulk insulation may also be retrofitted, added, or altered, and precautions will need to be applied by the insulation installer where recessed downlights are present. In Australia, AS3999 and in New Zealand, ASNZS 4246 include instructions for insulation installers in relation to clearances from recessed downlights. The presence of bulk insulation, particularly over the rear of ceiling-mounted downlights, can impair cooling air circulation. Unless the manufacturer specifies otherwise, the space above the luminaire shall remain clear and a warning sign installed. Where clearances are to be applied and bulk insulation is not fixed in position, one of the following means shall be provided to maintain the clearance: a barrier complying with AS or NZS 5110, a guard complying with AS 3999, or a barrier or guard constructed of fire-resistant materials. Combustible materials shall be prevented from being in close proximity or contacting hot surfaces of the luminaires. Where extraneous materials such as leaves, vermin debris, or combustible materials stored in a roof space are present in proximity to the downlight, precautions shall include the use of a suitably designed and certified luminaire or a barrier or compliance method. Unless the auxiliary equipment instructions permit otherwise, any auxiliary equipment operating at a high temperature shall be installed above any insulation as illustrated in Figure 4.7. Clause 4.5.2.3.4, Additional Installation Requirements, New Zealand only. The following additional requirements apply in New Zealand only. Only recessed luminaires of classes IC-F, IC, SIA 80, or SIA 135 which are compliant with AS or NZS 60598.2.2 including New Zealand only amendment shall be installed in residential buildings. If the recessed luminaire is supplied with a detachable barrier, the complete luminaire including its barrier shall be installed. All classes of recessed luminaires shall be spaced from other building elements as given in the luminaire manufacturer's installation instructions. If no instructions are available, the default clearances shown in Figure 4.9 shall apply and a fixed guard constructed of rigid fire-resistant material may be required. Under the New Zealand Building Code, building insulation is required. Where building insulation is already fitted and recessed luminaires are retrofitted, added, or altered, precautions must be taken by the installer not to compromise the safety of the installation. Clause 4.5.2.4, Suspended ceilings. Luminaires that are supported by a ceiling panel shall not present a mechanical loading that exceeds the capacity of the ceiling panel, and shall not operate at a temperature that would cause deformation, discoloration, or other deterioration of the ceiling panel. Clause 4.6, Smoke and fire detectors. National building codes have requirements for installation of fire and smoke detectors in domestic residences, including location and number required. Where mains-powered smoke or fire detectors are fitted, such detectors may be directly connected to the lighting final subcircuit or to an individual final subcircuit. Use of the lighting final subcircuit provides monitoring that the mains power supply is available, as failure of lighting in an electrical installation would be indicated by the non-operation of lighting luminaires. Fire and smoke detectors are not considered to be safety services for the purposes of this standard. Clause 4.7, Cooking appliances. Clause 4.7.1, Switching device. A circuit for a fixed or stationary cooking appliance having an open cooking surface incorporating electric heating such as a cooktop, deep fat fryer, barbecue griddle or similar shall be provided with a switch operating in all active conductors, mounted near the appliance in a visible and readily accessible position. Switches shall be marked to identify the appliance controlled. Where the open cooking surface is a combined gas and electric appliance incorporating both gas and electric cooking, the switching device shall operate in all active and neutral conductors. Where an electric cooktop is installed in a public park or other open area, the required switch shall be installed adjacent to the cooktop and, to prevent damage by vandalism, may be placed under a lockable cover that is located so that it is able to be operated as required for servicing and maintenance purposes of the cooktop. The switch should be mounted within 2 meters of the cooking appliance but not on the appliance in such a position that the user does not have to reach across the open cooking surface. A single switch is permissible for the control of associated cooking appliances in the same room. It is recommended that switches, particularly those in domestic installations, be marked to identify the appliance controlled. This requirement is not intended to apply to enclosed cooking appliances such as built-in ovens and microwave ovens. Clause 4.7.2 Connection. In New Zealand, a freestanding cooking appliance shall be connected to the electrical installation wiring by a socket outlet or an installation coupler. This requirement need not apply to built-in hobs and ovens. Clause 4.8 Appliances producing hot water or steam. Clause 4.8.1 General. All appliances producing hot water or steam shall be protected against overheating by design or installation in all service conditions. Protection shall be provided by means of an appropriate non-self-resetting device functioning independently of the thermostat. This requirement need not apply to appliances that comply as a whole with an appropriate standard. Where an appliance has no free outlet, it shall also be provided with a device that limits the water pressure. Clause 4.8.2 Water heaters. Clause 4.8.2.1 Access to easing equipment of pressure relief and terminals of protective devices. Every unvented water heater shall be installed so that easing equipment of pressure relief devices and all terminals of the protective devices are readily available for operation, inspection, and adjustment. A vent pipe is one that is intended to operate at the pressure of the water system and the flow of the water being controlled by one or more valves in the outlet system. Clause 4.8.2.2 Protective devices fitted to unvented water heaters. Over-temperature cutouts and similar protective devices fitted to unvented water heaters shall operate directly in the circuit wiring to the heater elements and shall not be arranged for control through relays or contactors. Clause 4.8.2.3 Isolating switch. Every water heater shall be provided with an independent isolating switch or switches in accordance with Clause 2.3.2.2. Such switch or switches shall be additional to any automatic switch incorporated in the heater structure and grouped together and installed on or adjacent to the water heater, or on the switchboard at which the water heater final subcircuit originates. Clause 4.9 Room heaters. Clause 4.9.1 General. Where a permanently connected room heater or a number of permanently connected room heaters are installed in one room, an individual isolating switch and individual functional switch shall be provided for each room heater or for each group of room heaters. Where a number of permanently connected room heaters are installed in one room and are supplied by one final subcircuit, a single isolating switch may be used for the room heaters in that room. Clause 4.9.2 Isolating switches. In accordance with Clause 2.3.2.2, isolating switches shall be installed immediately adjacent to an entrance to or within the room where the room heater is located, or installed on the switchboard at which the room heater final subcircuit originates. Isolating switches may be incorporated in temperature control devices provided that they have a definite off position. Clause 4.9.3 Functional switches. In accordance with Clause 2.3.7, functional switches shall be installed in a readily accessible position in the same room or immediately adjacent to an entrance to the room in which the room heater or room heaters are located. A functional switch may be an appliance switch or a switch with an off position incorporated within the room heater, or an isolating switch provided in accordance with Clause 4.9.2. Clause 4.10 Electric heating cables for floors and ceilings and trace heating applications. Clause 4.10.1 General. Cables for electric heating systems and floors and ceilings and trace heating applications shall be of a type specifically designed for the purpose. The heating equipment shall be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. In New Zealand, additional requirements for underfloor and ceiling heating cables are detailed in ASNZS 6110. Clause 4.10.2 Heating cables. Heating cables shall be so installed that they are not in contact with flammable materials and where designed to be embedded are completely and adequately embedded in the substance they are intended to heat and do not suffer any detrimental effect because of flexing or movement of the substance in which they are embedded, or where designed as trace heating cables shall provide adequate heat transfer to the surface or material to which they are fixed. Clause 4.10.3 Isolating switches. Cables or groups of cables that comprise the heating system shall be provided with an isolating switch or switches in accordance with Clause 2.3.2.2. Isolating switches may be incorporated in temperature control devices provided that they have a definite off position. Isolating switches shall be installed immediately adjacent to an entrance to or within the room or area in which the heating system is located, or installed on the switchboard at which the heating system final subcircuit originates. Where the heating system is provided for trace heating applications, the isolating switch need not be located as specified in this clause. Clause 4.10.4 Functional switches. Cables or groups of cables that comprise the heating system shall be provided with a functional switch or switches in accordance with Clause 2.3.7. Functional switches shall be installed in a readily accessible position immediately adjacent to an entrance to or within the room or area in which the heating system is located. A functional switch may be an isolating switch in accordance with Clause 4.10.3. Where the heating system is provided for trace heating applications, the functional switch need not be located as specified in this clause. Clause 4.10.5 Additional protection. All heating cables shall be provided with additional protection by an ASNZS with a fixed residual current not exceeding 30 mA, and in the case of heating units fitted with a conductive covering, this covering shall be earthed, and in the case of underfloor heating units without a conductive covering, an earthed metallic grit with a spacing not exceeding 30 mm shall be provided above the underfloor heating cable, and heating units shall be provided with adequate mechanical protection to prevent damage. Clause 4.10.6 Signs. Where heating cables are installed, suitable signs drawing attention to their existence shall be provided in each location. Signs warning of the danger of covering embedded heating equipment with furnishings or building materials that might cause excessive temperatures shall be provided where appropriate. This requirement may be satisfied by clearly and permanently marking the functional switch or switches in the heated room or area, or providing suitable labeling at the relevant distribution board. Clause 4.11 Electric duct heaters. The electrical portion of any electric duct heater installation shall comply with the requirements of this standard. Attention is drawn to the fact that such installations are within the scope of ASNZS 1668.1, and safety requirements are contained in ASNZS 3102, and compliance therewith may be required by the relevant regulatory authorities. Clause 4.12 Electricity converters. Clause 4.12.1 General. For the purpose of this clause, an electricity converter includes both static and dynamic equipment designed either to stabilize the supply voltage or to change the voltage or frequency of an electricity supply, or to maintain a continuous electricity supply for a limited period of time when the primary source of electricity supply is interrupted. Examples include uninterruptible power systems, semiconductor power converters and inverters, voltage stabilizers, motor generator sets, and rotary converters. Transformers and engine-driven generating sets that comply with ASNZS 3010 shall not be considered as electricity converters. Requirements for alternate, standby and standalone systems are set out in Clause 7.3. Clause 4.12.2 Selection and installation. Guidance on the selection and installation of electricity converters is contained in ASNZS 62040 series for uninterruptible power systems, AS 60146 series for semiconductor power converters, AS 3011 for batteries, and AS 1359 series for rotating electrical machines. Clause 4.12.3 Control. Where an electrical installation or part thereof is supplied through an electricity converter, the converted supply shall be controlled by an isolating switch or switches at the output of the converter or at the switchboard to which the output is connected. Each electricity converter shall be controlled by switches or devices suitable for starting and stopping the converter. Where there is more than one switch or device for this purpose, they shall be grouped together and clearly identified. An electricity converter shall be so arranged that it cannot supply energy upstream of the point of connection to the installation either directly or indirectly. Electricity converters may be arranged to supply energy upstream of the point of connection to the installation subject to any additional conditions required by the electricity distributor. Provision shall be made to ensure that all necessary connections for protection in the installation remain intact when supply is available from the output of the electricity converter. Clause 4.12.4 Isolation. Clause 4.12.4.1 General. Each electricity converter shall be provided with an independent isolating switch in accordance with Clause 2.3.2.2 that shall be installed adjacent to or on the electricity converter so that a person operating the switch has a clear view of any person working on the converter, and comply with Clause 4.13 when the electricity converter incorporates an earth-neutral conductor, and be under manual control only and not be capable of being overridden or bypassed by programmable control systems or the like. Clause 4.12.4.2 Electricity converters incorporating batteries. Where batteries are incorporated in an electricity converter, a switch capable of interrupting the supply from such batteries shall be installed adjacent to the isolating switch and shall be clearly identified to indicate its purpose. A single switch that incorporates both alternating current and direct current switching functions outlined in Clause 4.12.4.1 and this Clause 4.12.4.2 may be used. Clause 4.12.5 Overcurrent protection. Clause 4.12.5.1 Electricity converter protection. Electricity converters shall be provided with overcurrent protection. Overcurrent protective devices shall not be provided where the unexpected interruption of the supply could cause a greater danger than overcurrent. Overcurrent protective devices shall be located as close as practicable to the output terminals of the electricity converter so that the unprotected interconnecting conductors are as short as practicable and in no case exceed 15 meters in length. The unprotected interconnecting conductors shall be completely enclosed by metal or other material that is not flammable. Overcurrent protection may be provided by an overcurrent protective device within the electricity converter itself, or by the characteristics of the electricity converter being unable to support the fault current. Where an electricity converter is intended to operate in parallel with a network or other source, circulating harmonic current shall be limited so that the current carrying capacity of conductors is not exceeded. The effects of circulating harmonic currents may be limited by the selection of generating sets with compensated windings, the provision of a suitable impedance in the connection to generator star points, the provision of switches that interrupt the circulatory circuit but are interlocked so that protection is not impaired, the provision of filtering equipment, or other suitable means. Clause 4.12.5.2 Circuit protection. Every submain or final subcircuit outgoing from an electricity converter shall be individually protected in accordance with Clause 2.5 and shall also include additional protection where required by Clause 2.6. This requirement need not apply where protection on the incoming side provides protection against an overcurrent condition on the outgoing side. Overcurrent protective devices shall not be provided where the unexpected interruption of the supply could cause a greater danger than overcurrent. The possible waveform of a fault current to earth can affect the operation of RCDs and shall be taken into account for the selection of the type of RCD. Where an electricity converter includes an inverter, the RCD shall be of a type suitable for the waveform of the particular inverter and in accordance with the inverter manufacturer's recommendations. Requirements for types of RCDs are set out in Clause 2.6.2.2. Clause 4.12.6 Earthing. The output of an electricity converter shall be provided with the same type of earthing system used for the associated electrical installation. Protective earthing conductors shall not be switched. Provision shall be made to ensure that all necessary connections for protection such as the MEN connection remain intact when supply is available from the output of the system. See Clause 4.12.2 for information regarding standards applicable to various devices. Clause 4.12.7 Neutral continuity. Electricity converters, particularly static converters such as uninterruptible power systems, shall be arranged to ensure that the continuity of the neutral conductor to the load is not interrupted during bypass or maintenance switching. Clause 4.12.8 Electrical equipment connected to output. All electrical equipment connected to the output side of an electricity converter shall be suitable for the voltage, current, and frequency of the output of the unit. The values of current carrying capacity and voltage drop specified in the AS or NZS 300.1 series are valid only for conductors operating at 50 Hz. Refer to Clause 2.6.2.2 regarding the type of a CD to be used where additional protection is required for circuits or equipment supplied by an electricity converter. Clause 4.13 Motors. Clause 4.13.1 Protection against injury from mechanical movement. Clause 4.13.1.1 Switching devices. Every motor shall be provided with a switching device capable of starting and stopping the motor, emergency stopping in accordance with Clause 2.3.5, and isolating the motor for mechanical maintenance in accordance with Clause 2.3.6. Exceptions. Where several motors must function as a group or in a coordinated manner, such as a split-system air conditioner, a single switching device may control more than one motor. A switch for item C need not be provided for motors connected by a plug-in socket outlet, or incorporated in an appliance with no exposed moving parts, or rated not greater than 150 VA notes. Refer to Clause 2.3 for the switching device requirements. As NZS 1668.1 requires locking of air handling and smoke spill isolating switches in the on position. Clause 4.13.1.2 Rating of switches. The isolating switch shall have a rating not less than the full load current of the motor when installed in the motor supply circuit, or the control circuit current when installed in the motor starter circuit. Any switch operating directly in the motor supply circuit shall be capable of interrupting locked rotor or stall current. If not specified, locked rotor or stall current shall be taken as 8 times full load current for AC motors, or 4 times for DC motors. Notes. Suitable switches include those complying with AS 3133 marked with M and the locked rotor current, or switches complying with AS NZS 3947.3 marked with DC23 or AC23. Clause 4.13.1.3 Devices for starting and stopping. Starting and stopping devices shall be located so they are easily operated by the person in charge. A stopping device or isolating switch shall be provided where danger is likely because of moving parts. The stopping device shall remain effective during a fault in a motor control circuit. Remote-controlled equipment shall also have stopping devices at all danger points. Emergency stopping shall comply with Clause 2.3.5. Clause 4.13.1.4 Protection against restarting or reversal. Motors shall be provided with means to prevent danger from unexpected restarting. Notes. This need not apply where warning of automatic restarting is adequate. Alternatives include enclosing moving parts or using warning sirens. Measures shall be taken where danger may occur due to incorrect direction of rotation. Notes. This applies particularly where reverse current braking is used. Clause 4.13.2 Protection against overload. Each electric motor rated above 370 watts shall be provided with protection against overload. Exception. This clause does not apply to motors within electrical equipment complying with an appropriate standard. Clause 4.13.3 Protection against overtemperature. Clause 4.13.3.1 General. Electric motors shall have overtemperature protection where they may be required to run unattended and have a rating greater than 480 VA for shaded pole motors, or 240 VA for other unattended motors, or a rating greater than 2,250 watts. Exception. This clause does not apply where overtemperature protection is not permitted or is not required in accordance with Clause 4.13.3.2. Notes. A continuously running motor or a motor under automatic control in non-domestic premises is deemed unattended. Examples include motors for refrigerators in shops, motors in remote basements, and motors for communal refrigerators in flats. Clause 4.13.3.2 Protection not required. Overtemperature protection is not required where Clause 7.2.9 applies for fire protection motors, or where opening the motor circuit could cause a hazard. It is also not required for unattended submersible pump motors immersed in water rated not greater than 2,250 watts. Clause 4.13.3.3 Overtemperature protective devices. Protective devices shall comply by providing thermal overload protection in accordance with AS 60947.4.1, or built-in thermal protection in accordance with AS 60947.8, or an equivalent protective device. The protective device shall disconnect the required number of supply conductors. Clause 4.14 Transformers. Clause 4.14.1 General. Transformers shall be installed in accordance with clauses 4.14.2 to 4.14.5. Exception. This clause does not apply to an instrument transformer, an extra-low voltage transformer, a luminous discharge tube transformer, or a transformer incorporated in a motor starter. Clause 4.14.2 Secondary circuit. Clause 4.14.2.1 General. Wiring and equipment connected to the secondary winding shall comply with the requirements for extra low, low, or high voltage. Clause 4.14.2.2 Control and protection. Secondary conductors shall be treated as submain or final subcircuit conductors and shall be controlled and protected according to clauses 2.3 and 2.5. Exceptions include where only one subcircuit is supplied, or where conductor capacity is not less than the rated current adjusted by the transformer voltage ratio. Clause 4.14.3 Low voltage transformer supply. Clause 4.14.3.1 Isolating transformers. Electrical equipment may be supplied through an isolating transformer in accordance with Clause 7.4. Clause 4.14.3.2 Other transformers. Electrical equipment shall be earthed in accordance with Clause 5.4. Exception. When the output complies with ASNZS 61558, earthing is not required on the secondary. Clause 4.14.3.3 Autotransformers. An autotransformer shall not supply equipment that requires a voltage rating less than the highest input or output voltage. Clause 4.14.3.4 Step-up transformers. No connection shall be made between primary and secondary windings when voltage is raised above normal supply voltage. Exception. A connection may be made using a protective earthing conductor to provide an earth reference supply. Clause 4.15 Capacitors. Clause 4.15.1 General. Capacitors shall be installed in accordance with clauses 4.15.2 and 4.15.3. Exception. This does not apply to capacitors integral to other equipment such as luminaires. Clause 4.15.2 Electrical equipment. Clause 4.15.2.1 General. Equipment and wiring for capacitors shall be suitable for the highest expected voltages, currents and temperatures. Means shall be provided to dissipate heat. Clause 4.15.2.2 Rating of circuit breakers, switches or contactors. Devices controlling capacitors shall be suitable for switching capacitors and appropriate for reactive current. Notes. An example is a utilization category AC6 contactor. Clause 4.15.2.3 Current carrying capacity of supply conductors. Where a capacitor is controlled by a circuit breaker, conductors shall have current rating not less than 135% of the capacitor rating or breaker setting. For motors, conductor ratings follow the motor circuit or 135% of capacitor rating. Clause 4.15.3 Provision for discharge and control. Clause 4.15.3.1 General. Capacitors greater than 0.5 microfarads shall have a discharge path. Terminal voltage shall fall below 50 volts within the required time after disconnection. Warning notices shall state that capacitors must be completely discharged before work. Clause 4.15.3.2 Capacitors connected in parallel with individual appliances. Capacitors shall be arranged so discharge does not occur through the appliance windings. No switch or fuse shall be inserted between capacitor and appliance. Exception. Does not apply where a permanently connected discharge device is used. The capacitor shall be controlled by the appliance control gear. Clause 4.15.3.3. Capacitors not connected in parallel with individual appliances. The capacitor shall comply with the requirements shown in your image. Clause 4.16. Electrical equipment containing liquid dielectrics. Clause 4.16.1. General. Where equipment contains flammable liquid in significant quantity, precautions shall be taken to prevent burning liquid or byproducts from spreading. Clause 4.16.2. Liquid dielectrics with flashpoint not exceeding 250 degrees Celsius. Precautions include preventing fire spread. Notes. Examples are a drainage pit or installation in a fire-resistant chamber. For less than 50 liters, minimal precautions may be enough. It may be desirable to switch off supply automatically in a fire. Clause 4.17. Batteries. Information on battery selection and installation is contained in AS3011.1 and AS3011.2. Clause 4.18. Gas appliances. Clause 4.18.1. General. A gas appliance connected to the electricity supply shall be provided with a means of electrical isolation that is adjacent to the appliance location and is accessible with the appliance in the installed position. The means of isolation shall be a plug to a switched socket outlet, or a plug to a socket outlet that may be located in an inaccessible position but has a separate switch operating in all live conductors located in an accessible position, or a switch operating in all live conductors. Note. If the appliance has an open cooking surface incorporating both gas and electric cooking, it shall also comply with Clause 4.7. Clause 4.18.2. Gas cylinders containing heavier than air gases outdoors. Electrical equipment that is a source of ignition, including socket outlets, switches, luminaires, switchboards, meter boxes and air conditioners, shall not be installed within the hazardous areas shown in Figure 4.10 by dimensions A and B. These dimensions apply for both exchange and in situ fill gas cylinders. For further information refer to ASNZS 60079.1.0.1 and ASNZS 5601, particularly for gases lighter than air. Exception. Approved combined gas and electrical meter enclosures are exempt from these requirements. Note. Electrical equipment selected and installed in accordance with Clause 7.7.2.4 is not considered an ignition source. Clause 4.18.3. Reticulated lighter than air gas system, metering system and regulators. In New Zealand only, electrical equipment, except items that are part of the gas system and installed to the hazardous area requirements, shall not be installed within the hazardous areas shown in Figure 4.11 for both venting and non-venting regulators. For additional information refer to ASNZS 5601. Exception. The dimensions may be reduced where the owner of the metering or pressure-reducing equipment has otherwise advised a different zoning in writing or by way of a sign or sticker attached permanently in proximity to the gas equipment. Note. Electrical equipment selected and installed in accordance with Clause 7.7.2.4 is not considered an ignition source. Clause 4.19. Air conditioning and heat pump systems. Air conditioning and heat pump systems incorporating a compressor shall be provided with a lockable isolating switch installed adjacent to the unit, which isolates all parts of the system including ancillary equipment from the same location. For split system air conditioning units, where the manufacturer requires the air conditioning system to be connected to the electricity supply by means of a plug-in socket at the internal unit, the isolating switch installed at the external unit shall control the socket outlet located at the internal unit. Exception. The isolating switch may be installed at the switchboard supplying the system where the switchboard is dedicated to the equipment, such as an air conditioning plant room. That brings us to the end of Section 4. This section covers a wide range of electrical equipment, and every clause connects back to real work you'll do in the industry. The key message is that each appliance or system has its own safety needs, and the installation must follow the specific requirements to match those risks. When you're on site, keep these rules in mind so the equipment operates safely and meets the standard. In the next section, we'll continue building your understanding of how electrical installations work from both a safety and performance point of view.